Welcome to the Market Mystics podcast. I'm Joshua.
I'm Kim. Let's dive in. Welcome back, you guys.
It's good to have all of our listeners with us. I was going to say it's good to see you all, but we very rarely see you all unless you are like the handful of listeners who've reached out and we've had Zoom calls with just because they're cool people. So thank you to those people, but it's great to have the rest of you listening with us, whether you're on audio only or you're checking us out on YouTube. We're happy to have you with us.
For sure. Josh, what's been going on?
So I was thinking today, like when I was thinking about recording, and I was looking through my notes on my phone, and I wish I could remember exactly who said this so I could give them credit. But as we mentioned in the last episode, like we actually took almost 2 weeks off of recording. And so like I've listened to things. I was at an event in, I don't know if you saw our Instagram post, but I was at an event in Dallas, and got to meet up with several of our awesome guests that we've had. And so that was a lot of fun. And so I might have heard this during a conversation there. I don't actually remember because I didn't put that in my notes. I just wrote it down. But it was a comment that somebody made about rest, and it grabbed my attention because if you've listened to the show for a while, we've talked about rest for a few years, basically since the beginning of our podcast. And the importance of rest in our lives, the importance of rest in our spiritual walk, and really just kind of like diving into what that looks like for us, what it means to us. But this person made the statement, the highest expression of faith is rest. Rest is superior to miracles. And it really grabbed me because, like, first of all, it's a really bold statement to say that rest is more important than miracles. But it's like when you read the Bible, rest is the only thing that it tells you to strive for. And so when I'm processing this, it's like, man, maybe that's actually true. Like maybe that's like a really good statement, because the other things are something that is supposed to flow out of relationship. But rest seems to be something that you have to fight to stay in because you're constantly being pulled in other directions. And Kim and I have talked about this a lot in the past, but just in case you're new with us, like when we talk about rest, we don't mean the lack of doing something. Like it's just, are you in a state of rest? Are you working from a place of rest? Are you creating from a place of rest? Are you learning from a place of rest? Or are you participating in life through a place of striving? And so I think like when I'm thinking about the miracles and the other things that are supposed to be indicative of a Christian walk, it's like, well, that flows out of a relationship. And it's hard to have a relationship where something is flowing from if it's not rooted in a place of rest. And so maybe fighting for that place of rest, which then allows the relationship to blossom, which then allows all the other things to flow from. So maybe our focus in some churches would be focused on the gifts or the miracles, when if it was just focused on the relationships, the gifts and the miracles would flow from that place. What's your thought?
I think you hit the nail on the head with that last statement. I tend to think of, in our Christian walk, operating from a place of rest, striving to be in rest is very indicative of being. And so leading from being who you're supposed to be and who God has said you are and who he believes you to be and all of those things, as opposed to leading from doing to then define who you are. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like, well, obviously I'm going to get my identity from the Lord. Well, are you? That's what I'm going to ask, because we've been practicing this for years now. I mean, we really kind of got into a place of trial by fire with learning how to rest. I will speak for myself, and I won't try to throw you under the bus or anything and speak for your life. But for me, I had gotten to a point where everything I was doing was from a place of striving, and it wasn't from the place of rest. And one of the biggest and most important things that really set a trajectory for my walk and my relationship with the Lord has been his identity for me and not my own. But when he's trying to speak to me about my identity and I still continue to operate as though my value comes from what I'm doing, I'm just getting things out of order. And so, at least for my life, it needed that like extreme correction, which sounds a little harsh because really I was going and learning to rest. And so there's a lot of rest and there's a lot of fun and there's a lot of like simply just being a son of God that happened, which is glorious. And I'm not going to pretend like it's not, but it was so necessary because even though I could hear what he's saying about me, I was still leading from the doing as opposed to leading from the being, you know? And I think that's really what we're talking about when we're saying operating from a place of rest. Why is it restful to operate from the place of being? It's because you're not trying to prove that you're somebody or that you're valuable or that you're worthy of this or that you should be respected or you should be loved or any of those things. That's established. That's solid. And you can rest in who you are and who he says you are without having to prove anything. And then when you start operating from there, when you do the doing, it's not because it's trying to define who you are. It's advancing the mission. It's advancing the kingdom. It's advancing your journey.
Yeah, that's really good. I was looking at, because the first part of that statement that I said, like rest is the highest expression of faith. So I was looking at like faith, which I would just describe as like believing without seeing something. And so I was like thinking about, well, how do you believe in rest without seeing rest? And that is also like a really interesting thing that's coming into my mind. We have this listener who came into our Discord channel, which we have. If you guys are interested, the link is in the description of the show. And he was sharing with us like kind of his mindset on trading the stock market. And he was sharing that he trades from a place of, well, why shouldn't I be successful? I'm a son of God. And that gets like, you can have theological discussions about whether or not that's real or not. But here's someone who's like believing, he has faith that is real, and he sees it in a very tangible way, where it's either like when you're trading, and he does day trading, so it's like it's either real or it isn't real, and it's going to be very tangible at the end of the day when you look at your balance sheet, because it's either going to be positive or negative. And his track record of being successful with that is pretty high. He's a very good trader. And he and I have had quite a few little conversations just about trading and about sonship. And I have a lot of respect and honor for this person, just in the road that he's walked with trading, because he's walking out something that a lot of people would probably push back against. And he's just sitting there saying, no, I'm really fighting to be in this place of rest where I know that my God will provide for all my needs. And I've chosen the avenue of trading for him to provide for my needs. And I believe he's a good father. So why wouldn't I believe he would help me be a profitable trader? And it's such an interesting place to be, but he's been doing it for a while. Like, he has a track record, a tangible track record of how fighting to be in that place of rest, having faith in his sonship, has made a difference. And like, I have lots of conversations with your husband Jason about like, what is the point of all of this if it's not tangible? And I think of this trader often because he is living a mystical life where his sonship is the foundation for his trading platform. And it's such a amazing thing to see. And I know, like, you and I have dipped our toes in that in the past, and have had some success with it. But I think it's just encouraging to see other people like really stepping into this message, really stepping into this belief system, really stepping into rest and fighting to stay there. Because there's days where he's not profitable. And I've had days when I've been trading that I'm not profitable. And it's hard to stay in a place of rest when you have something that's not profitable, because then your ego or all these other thoughts start swarming in of, well, was I wrong? Did I hear wrong? Am I not in rest? What was my belief system when I was going wrong?
Is God punishing me?
Am I being punished? And it's just such an interesting, that's such an interesting place to be, to sit in that spot of being uncomfortable with, well, that didn't turn out how I wanted it to. So what are you going to do? And I think in that spot, it is the most important place to fight to stay in rest when you're in that spot. When it's all working out, it's relatively easy to stay in rest. Sometimes you can get into works when it's all going your way, because you sometimes think, oh, maybe I'm the one who's making it happen that way. And if it is you who's making it happen that way, congratulations, but it's going to be real hard to maintain. If it's happening that way because you're in a place of rest and alignment with the will of God, then you don't have to, it doesn't depend as much on who you are.
Right. I was just thinking about, and Josh, you've heard this a million times, so I'm sorry for repeating myself, but I was thinking about, there was a trade that I was doing. I've told this story before. You can probably hear it in other episodes, but I think it's really relevant to this conversation. There was a trade that I was doing. I heard the Lord tell me to put in a certain amount of money, which was more than I was comfortable with, at a certain time on a certain particular investment, right? And I know that I heard him tell me to do this. And that was like 8 p.m. By midnight, it had like almost tripled. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, right? And then when I woke up in the morning, it had completely corrected, and I was left with about a tenth of what I had invested. And as I said, it was a very meaningful investment, like just dollars and cents wise. It was more than I was comfortable trading. And then it didn't recover from there. And I had people who knew about this trade, people who were close to me, who were questioning, like, well, did God really tell you to do it? Did he really tell you to do that much? Did he really tell you to do it then? Are you sure you weren't supposed to just pull it right back out? All of the different questions that are reasonable and rational questions in this world, right? And I continually was going back to him, and I'm like, I know you told me to do this. I know you said this, and I know you didn't tell me to pull it out. What is up? Right? And he came back to me and he said, are you in this? Are you in this for the sake of your advancement? Or are you in it whether you win or lose, essentially? And he's like, is this about relationship with me and who you are with me? Or is this about just getting gains and dollar signs? Which was a very humbling thing. And I was like, no, you're right. I'm in it regardless. Like, you could tell me to do it again right now, I'd do it, but it was a really important lesson, because even in those losses, there were lessons being made. There were disciplines being learned. There was faith being built, which I don't know that I could have received any quicker had I done anything else. And I think sometimes we look at like operating from a place of being, and oh my gosh, can you hear my computer?
I can.
My daughter's trying to FaceTime me, and she knows we're recording. Anyway, so operating from this place of rest, it really is that place of identity in him, and like knowing that who he is to you and who you are to him. And it's like, then you don't have to get bowled over when things don't work out exactly like you think they're going to. Why? Because we know that he works all things together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose, right? And so even if it's not immediate results, if it's not immediately the result that you even think that you wanted, I think it then opens a door and begs the question, well, what was the gain that came out of this? It might have looked like loss in one area, but what is the gain that's coming out of it? And that's not the easiest question to ask, especially when you're seeing like a bright, shining, flashing neon light in front of your face that says, oh, it was a loss. Right? But I think that's part of what this is. And honestly, to the second part of that quote that you said, that the highest expression of faith is rest, it's superior to miracles. I mean, the more we talk about this, the more I actually agree. At first it sounded very bold and like, woo, right? But if this is the place in which you're operating, there's nothing that's impossible to you. You're tapping into technology that is already much higher than what's available, like what's readily available at this level of the earth. And honestly, I think miracles, just the word itself, kind of is indicative to like a one-off something.
Sure.
Right? But I think what we're talking about, staying in this place of rest and operating there, I'm just having issues all over the place. Do you see this fly? Oh my gosh.
He's after you.
He's after me. But staying in that place of rest, that's staying in that place where this technology can really start working out. And it doesn't have to be a one-off thing. So is it superior to miracles? Yeah, I think it is, because it starts becoming normal life. It starts becoming, no, this is just how things work. And then it doesn't have to be a one-off thing. And it's just a higher way of living.
Yeah. I'm part of uh, a church which we've talked about some, but Wildlife Church from Sri Lanka, and their pastor says, um, I haven't heard him say this so much recently, but went through a season where he said it a lot, and he was asking people the question: do you want to be a miracles based church or a solutions based church? And like that was kind of offensive to me. Like I had to like process that because I was like, well, the miracles are pretty amazing. But his point, I think, is sort of what we're talking about in that the miracles tend to be like a one off. You're not exactly sure how it happened situation. And there's nothing wrong with it. Like, please, God, give me all the miracles. um, but in your normal life, the um, the system of, well, this is happening because this is how I'm positioned, this is what's going on, like it's a more consistent way and it's an easier way to translate what's happening to a mainstream narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is what's like um that's like where I'm sitting here is it's like you could be in a you can be in a system that looks like a miracle to everyone else, but you know the work that you've done to stay in that place of rest, to stay in that place of sonship, to stay in that place of authority, so that what looks like a miracle to everyone else is just a system working for you in your life.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was kind of right on the same track with you. I think that some of these things are going to continue to look like miracles to others.
Mm.
And some of these things may look like a miracle the first time you experience it. But then once that faith is built that, oh my, this is for me, then it doesn't have to just stay as the one off thing. Then it can become the systematic thing. Oh, well, I know how to do this because I'm operating from this place of rest. And this technology is available to me,
Mm.
or this system is available to me,
Right.
or this way of living is available to me. And it doesn't actually have to do with any kind of like superiority or any kind of I'm better than they are or they're better than me. It all has to do with, because I think, again, that's really getting identity from this level, this
Mm-hmm.
realm from the world. But it's knowing that as a son of God, the whole kingdom is available
Mm.
to you, you know? And I think that's the transition. That's the transition that I want. I think back to that time that we had where we had to learn rest, and it was a miracle that that happened. And
Mm.
there were miracle after miracles that happened on that trip. And I mean it was wild. But then once it happened more than once, then you start seeing a pattern. Oh, if I really focus myself here and operate this way, then this flows. And if I step out of that, then it doesn't do that anymore. You know what I mean? And so then it went from like, oh, here's this one off, wow, this is a really amazing thing, into, oh, this is how we can just function.
Mm.
And at least on that trip, the whole learning period was this comes from a place of rest.
Yeah.
And this is how you get to that place of rest. And this is what that place of rest feels like. And this is what that place of rest looks like. And this is how you get back into that place of rest. Like all of those things we had to work out. And it can either be complicated or it can be wildly simple.
Mm. Yeah. And I like when I'm thinking about this, it's like, well, I think it's wildly complicated until it's simple. Like it seems like, wow, that could never happen to me. That was really hard. How did that happen? I think to like our interview with Chris Blackaby, and he's talking about living a life of faith where he shows up to the airport with no money and someone walks up and goes, "Hey, I'm supposed to give this to you," and buys him a ticket. Like you could think, "Oh, that could never happen to me." And when you listen to his story, he didn't necessarily think it was going to happen to him either. He was just being obedient.
Right.
And it happened. And I think that's like, you do that enough times and suddenly your nervous system gets the message that things work out for me. And then that's how you start to approach life. And that's what helps the miracle. Like that's what helps rest. The miracles flow from that place of rest, is when your nervous system gets this message that no, it's okay. It's going to be okay. It's not because I'm fighting to make this happen. It's just because of who I am. And maybe to get there, there's striving to get into that rest. There's striving to make it happen. There's striving to learn. There's striving to grow. It doesn't have to happen as an instantaneous thing. I mean, I think of Chris often when we have these conversations, because from the outside it's like, man, he lived that life and it was so easy. And you talk to him and it was like, no, it was so hard. Like it was so tough to live on only faith and just trusting that it would show up, even though it happened for years. Mm-hmm. And then when he came out of that and he started taking a salary, then he had to work on his nervous system, not being stuck in, well, now I only have this amount of money, when he just lived years of having like God provide his every need. And so it's not that this is a easy road, but if you can find that place of rest where your nervous system can settle into, it's going to be okay, I think that changes the way you approach life. And I think that changes how miracles happen to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
We should have Chris Black. Chris Black. Should we have Chris Black? We should have Chris back.
Chris Blackaby back.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. If you haven't, you guys should check out, he just released a 12-part series on sonship on his YouTube channel. So you guys should check that out. It's pretty great.
We'll link that in the show notes. Yeah. Also, this is what I was thinking, just in full transparency, because if I can't be vulnerable on here, I don't know how this is very authentic. But I go through seasons. I'm in a season currently where I am kind of relearning rest again, because yes, I learned it and then I had to relearn it and I'm relearning it again. And I don't think it is, for me, I've not found the perfection in operating from there, but I've found how much easier it is. And I find myself having moments of like really feeling like I'm fighting against the current. You know what I mean? Like really, really striving in a big way for everything but rest. And if I can just have that awareness to go, oh, wow, I have really stepped far out of this, because I've gone through that training and like I've been through it before, I know how to get there again. And I think that it doesn't necessarily have to be a one and done thing. If it is, hallelujah, like awesome. I'm so glad for you. I will tell you from experience, it hasn't been that way for me. And I think that's okay, because you know what it does is it continually reminds me that this life is done better in partnership with the Lord than it is done by me thinking that I know best. Even though I have learned from the Lord and he has taught me, I don't think that partnership is ever meant to end.
Yeah.
And so when I like go out, it's like my 8-year-old daughter. She'll go ride her bike around the block. She's got like a taste of independence and she's ready to go. Right. And yes, it's great. She needs to go out and have like, she knows how to do this and she knows how to look for cars and those things, but she's still coming home and she's still even like debriefing with me. Oh, well, I saw this and, there was this car, but I pulled over and because there wasn't, any of those things. But I think that's the part that I have to remember is that always I need to come back to that partnership, regardless of how well I've been trained and how independently it seems like I could do this, because honestly, it's just better with him.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just better with him. I think that's such a key. It's easy to say, but it's so important. Life is better with him. Life is better in that place of relationship.
Yeah.
In the simplicity of it. Just like you're talking about the simple everyday things. Like, can you, maybe this place of like learning to be in rest again is learning to go back to the simple things. Like maybe we complicate it too much and we need to return to just the simplicity of I'm in you, you're in me. Like go back to the simplicity of you love me. Like, Jesus loves me, this I know. Like, can you go back to the simplicity of that? And it's okay. Like we talk about maturing and like self-sovereignty all the time. And those are very important things, but not if you lose the simplicity of the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Good topic today, Josh.
Thanks.
This was another one of those surprise topics, you guys. If you've listened for a while, sometimes we both know what we're going to talk about, and sometimes only one of us knows what we're going to talk about.
Well, it was still good.
It was super good. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate whoever said it. And we are trying to give credit, even if we don't have a name.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you for whoever dropped that bit of wisdom into my nervous system.
It's good.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Hey, thanks for listening. Keep up with us along this journey by liking, subscribing, and becoming a member through YouTube.
Members get exclusive access to bonus content with our guests, deeper dives into topics, and a look into other projects. We're glad to have you here. See you next time.